Matthew 26:47 through 50. He was still speaking when Judas, one of the 12, came, and with him a large mob from the chief priests and elders of the people, carrying swords and clubs. So this is when he was in the garden after he prayed, while he was still praying. It's saying speaking, but Jesus was praying here. He's speaking to God. So, while he was still praying, and sometimes this is the way prayer works. While we're still praying, God answers it. It was just for this, the cup wasn't going to pass, so the answer was no. But he didn't even finish praying. It was like while the people were praying in Acts for Peter to get released from prison, he showed up. Sometimes God answers things when we're still praying. So they're carrying swords and clubs. Most likely they're with people from Roman authority, but most likely this is a group of people. Romans are there, but most likely there's anybody who's having a problem with Jesus was called into this group to make sure he got away, make sure he was took away, make sure he was rid of, type idea. So there was some Pharisees most likely in this group. Some of the Sadducees and scribes were in this group. And this is most likely why them people had clubs, because the Romans would have been given a sword. So these other groups probably just picked up anything, maybe hopefully take a hit towards Jesus as he left. So now his betrayer had given them a signal. Whom I kiss, he is the man, seize him. And so most likely this is kind of odd, really, other than it fulfilling Scripture. The fact that Jesus caused so much trouble, they should be able to identify him without this, kind of shows that is one or two people who knew exactly who he was, stirring up a whole group to go after and get him, which we actually see with Palm Sunday and the whole little events towards the end, to where they turn the crowd against him. Well, so the whole group going after him didn't know who Jesus was. They just knew the words he spoke, what he said, and what he did. They didn't know him personally. And what we can take from that is, until we know him personally, all we know is somebody else's story. We don't know him. We couldn't identify him until we know him personally. We just know somebody else's story, and that's the way it was with them. They had a few that rejected him, who was stirring up this entire group of people for the negative. And oftentimes that's how things can be stirred up today. It can be one or two outspoken people causing trouble, turning everything without people even noticing what is going on. And oftentimes those that speak the loudest are those that are heard. Those that make the biggest fuss. Not necessarily those that make the most sense, but those that make the biggest fuss. Now this does fulfill Scripture and prophecy about him being kissed and betrayed by a friend. But Jesus said to him, "Friend, for what are you here?" And they came forward and put their hands on Jesus and arrested him. So now Jesus is arrested. The Pharisees are probably happy about this because they think now this is over. They arrested John, and the movement of his went away. So they're thinking similarly, now that they got Jesus arrested, he's done with. Because once John was arrested, his disciples really didn't do nothing other than go ask Jesus for information based off what John did. By this time, John's disciples weren't even, most likely either they went back to what they were doing by this point, or they just accepted Jesus and started following him. But they're hoping that too happens with Jesus. They ain't necessarily needing to seeing a point. No, of course they want to kill him. We see that in Scripture. But the fact that he's put away for them may be seen, okay, this got this problem dealt with finally, is the way they're looking at it. Although what they didn't realize is it was part of God's plan. Oftentimes we see something as a problem, as even Christians, that God's wanting to do, and instead of embracing it, we try to just get it to go away when what He wants us to do is get through it because the blessing is on the other side.